Japan has some of the longest working hours in the world, some of the highest stress levels, some of the most densely packed cities on Earth. By every measure, they should be falling apart. Instead, they're outliving everyone. The average Japanese person lives to 84. In America, that number is 76. That's not a small gap. That's nearly a decade of extra life. A decade more of watching your grandchildren grow up. A decade more of mornings, meals, and memories that millions of people in the West simply never get. And scientists have spent years trying to explain it. They looked at genetics, they looked at healthcare systems, they looked at exercise habits. But the answer kept coming back to the same place: the table. Specifically, what the Japanese put on it, and more importantly, how they eat what's on it. Because the Japanese don't just have a different diet, they have an entirely different food philosophy, a set of ancient, deeply ingrained habits around eating that quietly protect the body in ways that modern medicine is only now beginning to fully understand. These are habits that naturally regulate weight without dieting, that reduce inflammation without supplements, that have been keeping one of the world's most overworked populations alive longer than almost any other group of people on the planet. And the striking thing is, none of it is complicated. None of it requires expensive superfoods or hour-long gym sessions. It just requires understanding what the Japanese have known for centuries and what the rest of the world has completely overlooked. So if you've ever wondered why you can eat less, try harder, and still feel like your health is working against you, this video was made for you. Here's what nobody tells you about why Western eating habits are quietly failing so many people. It's not willpower. It's not laziness. It's architecture. The modern food environment was built to override every signal your body naturally uses to regulate itself. Portion distortion, engineered hyperpalatable foods, eating while distracted, speed. The body wasn't designed for any of it. And when those natural signals get overridden long enough, the system breaks down. Not dramatically, slowly, invisibly. Until one day, the damage is impossible to ignore. The Japanese concept of Hara Hachi Bu, which translates literally to eat until you are 8 parts full, isn't a diet trick. It's a biological reset. When you eat to 80% capacity, you're giving the body's satiety signals time to catch up with consumption. It takes roughly 20 minutes for the brain to register fullness. Most people in the West have finished their meal, cleared their plate, and reached for something else before that signal ever arrives. Hara Hachi Bu closes that gap. Not by restriction, by timing. Picture a Tuesday evening. You've had a long day, you're sitting down to eat, and the instinct is to finish everything in front of you as fast as possible and move on. That instinct is costing years. When you slow down and stop at 80%, caloric intake drops naturally. No tracking, no measuring, no guilt. Studies on Okinawan populations show this single habit alone correlates with significantly lower rates of obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. One habit, one decision per meal, compounded across a lifetime. The Japanese also treat soup not as a starter, but as a regulator. Miso soup, fermented soybean paste dissolved in dashi broth, is consumed at the beginning of almost every traditional Japanese meal. And this isn't cultural coincidence. Warm liquid consumed before eating physically slows the pace of a meal, creates early stomach volume, and the fermented miso itself floods the gut with beneficial bacteria that Western diets chronically lack. The gut microbiome controls far more than digestion. It influences mood, immune response, inflammation levels, and even cognitive clarity. Miso isn't a side dish, it's a daily intervention. Then there's the structure of the meal itself. A traditional Japanese meal doesn't arrive as one large plate. It arrives as several small dishes: rice, protein, vegetables, soup, pickled vegetables, each portioned deliberately, each eaten in rotation. This practice is called ichiju sansai, meaning one soup, 3 sides. The mechanism here is profound. Eating across varied flavors and textures naturally decelerates consumption. The brain receives a broader range of sensory input, satisfaction arrives earlier, and the diversity of foods means a wider spectrum of nutrients in every single sitting. Compare that to a single large entree eaten in isolation, The body gets one nutritional profile, one flavor, and zero signal to stop until the plate is empty. There's also something deeply significant in the Japanese relationship with fish. Japan consumes more fish per capita than almost any other nation, and that consistent intake of omega-3 fatty acids, particularly from oily fish like salmon, mackerel, and sardines, has a measurable effect on arterial health, brain longevity, and systemic inflammation. Chronic inflammation is now understood to be an underlying driver of nearly every major age-related disease. The Japanese aren't supplementing their way out of it. They're eating their way out of it, 3 to 4 times a week, the way they always have. Consider also the role of umami, the fifth taste, discovered and named by Japanese scientist Kikuna Ikeda in 1908. Umami translates roughly to pleasant, savory taste, but the mechanism goes deeper than flavor. Foods naturally rich in umami, seaweed, fermented soy, mushrooms, fish broth, tend to be nutrient-dense, low in calories, and deeply satisfying. When a meal is genuinely satisfying at a sensory level, the psychological need to keep eating diminishes. The Japanese built umami into the foundation of their cuisine without ever framing it as a health strategy. The health was simply the outcome. Green tea deserves its own conversation. The Japanese drink matcha and sencha not as a wellness trend, but as a daily rhythm. Before meals, after meals, throughout the day. The compound EGCG found in green tea has been studied extensively for its role in metabolic regulation, cellular repair, and the reduction of oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is essentially the biological rust that accumulates inside the body over time, accelerating aging at a cellular level. Green tea doesn't eliminate it, but consistent daily consumption measurably slows it. Not a supplement, not a protocol, just tea, drunk the way it's always been drunk. And perhaps most quietly powerful of all, the Japanese eat with presence. Meals are not consumed at a desk, in a car, or in front of a screen. Food is prepared with care, plated with intention, and eaten with attention. This isn't aesthetics. Eating without distraction allows the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's rest and digest state, to fully activate. Digestion becomes more efficient. Nutrient absorption improves. The body actually processes the same food more effectively when the mind is present for the meal. Distracted eating isn't just a bad habit, it's a physiological disadvantage. What connects all of these habits isn't discipline, it's design. The Japanese didn't sit down one day and decide to optimize their health. They inherited a food culture that happened to be built around the body's natural rhythms, slowing down, diversifying, fermenting, savoring. Every practice described here works because it removes friction between the body and its own intelligence. The body already knows how to regulate weight.
It already knows how to signal fullness. It already knows how to digest and repair and protect itself. These habits simply stop interfering with that process. The Western food environment, by contrast, was designed, whether intentionally or not, to override every one of those signals at every turn. Bigger portions, faster eating, more distraction, fewer fermented foods, less variety, more isolation of nutrients. The result isn't personal failure, it's a systems problem, dressed up as a personal one. You were never broken. The environment was just built against you. None of this requires a complete life overhaul. Pick one thing from what's been shared here, just one, and bring it to your next meal. Slow down slightly. Add miso to your morning. Stop before the plate is empty.
That's the entry point. The Japanese didn't build their longevity through radical change. They built it through small, consistent habits practiced across an entire lifetime. And a lifetime, it turns out, is exactly what's at stake. If this shifted how you see food, drop a comment below with which habit you're starting with. And subscribe, because there's a lot more where this came from.